They say the universe remembers the loud things, the battles that shake planets, the fleets that burn skies, the leaders who carve their names into history with the fire of ambition. But sometimes, the universe remembers something quieter. A single act, a single heartbeat, a man who stood between death and innocence, not because he was ordered to, not because anyone would ever thank him, but because it was right. Long before he became a symbol, before his name echoed across systems, Thomas Chun was nobody. A translator, a voice between worlds, a man who believed that words could hold the line where weapons failed. He wasn't fast. He wasn't brave. He was human, stubborn, compassionate, impossibly human. And yet, in the space of a few seconds, he made a choice that would ripple through centuries. 8 blades fell. A child lived. And the galaxy changed forever. This is not a story about war or power. It's about the fragile, inefficient thing that keeps civilizations from devouring themselves. It's about the day the stars themselves learned what it means to care. He took 8 blades for an alien child. That's how they told it later, across colonies and stations, across crystal cities and deep space networks. But before the blades, before the legend, there was only Thomas Chun, a man most people forgot moments after meeting, a man who never believed history would care about someone like him. He was a translator, the kind of human who lived in the margins of greatness, keeping peace one word at a time. He worked on Port Meridian, a vast orbiting trade hub circling the gas giant Lurith. To most, it was chaos, tens of thousands of voices, hundreds of species, and the constant hum of commerce. But to Thomas, it was purpose. Every language, every treaty, every deal that didn't end in blood reminded him that words could be stronger than warships. That morning, he had gone out for something small. Replacement interface lenses, maybe a bowl of Kareth noodles. The recycled air shimmered with spice, oil, and alien pollen. Vendors shouted in tongues that tangled in the air like ribbons. He was mid-translation on his wrist pad, resolving a trade dispute between 2 silicate merchants, when he heard it. Screaming. Not the usual kind that came with bartering or mechanical failures. This was sharp, raw, desperate. It cut through the noise like glass through silk. Thomas looked up. The crowd was breaking apart, flowing away from a narrow alley behind the stalls. Humans, silicate, even the insectoid Valthene were scattering, eyes wide. And there, 3 figures in sleek, obsidian armor, moving like living shadows. Valerian assassins. He knew their reputation. Precise, perfect, unstoppable. They didn't make mistakes, and they never attacked without reason. Their target, a silicate child, small and trembling, body fracturing under the vibrations of her own terror. Thomas didn't think. There was no time for strategy or fear. Just movement. He ran. He wasn't fast. He wasn't brave. But something ancient in him refused to stand still. The assassins turned as he charged, caught off guard by the absurdity of it. An unarmed human running at professionals. The first blade hit him in the side, a flash of white fire. The second found his ribs. The third pierced his thigh. His body screamed for him to fall. But he pushed forward anyway, throwing himself between the child and death. Run, he tried to shout, but blood drowned the word. The assassins didn't speak. They simply finished what they'd started. 8 blades in total. Each strike clean, efficient, absolute. Each one meant for her. Each one finding him instead. He fell forward, body collapsing over the child like a shield. The world went dim. The last thing he heard was a sound unlike anything human. A silicate's cry of grief, pure resonance that made the air itself tremble. Then, nothing. Just darkness. Light. Soft, shimmering light filtered through translucent walls. His lungs burned. His chest screamed. But he was alive. Thomas blinked against the glow. The air smelled of silicon and ozone, sharp and clean. Every surface around him shimmered with geometric veins of light. Machines pulsed softly beside him, some clearly medical, others incomprehensible. 6 silicate warriors stood motionless near the door, crystalline forms gleaming with faint internal luminescence. He tried to move, but pain lanced through every nerve. His body wasn't just bandaged, it was rewired. Transparent circuitry pulsed beneath his skin, threads of alien healing. Human medicine could never have done this. He should have been dead. 8 times over. Then a voice like wind chimes broke the stillness. He's awake. The door slid open, and the light seemed to bend. A figure entered, tall and radiant, her crystalline surface veined with the haze of great age. Thomas recognized her instantly. Matriarch Velvis, ruler of the Silicate Coalition. Thomas Chun, she said, voice resonant and ancient. You have been brought to the attention of the highest levels of government. He tried to sit up. Bad idea. Pain roared through his torso. Do not move, the matriarch said, though there was gentleness in her tone. Your body is still repairing itself. She stepped closer. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate in her presence. You took 8 Valerian blades meant for my granddaughter, she said. You did not hesitate. You did not calculate. You acted. Thomas swallowed. She was going to die, he rasped. I could stop that. So I did. Her crystalline light shifted, a subtle ripple of emotion. Humans are strange creatures. You sacrifice logic for compassion. It is inefficient. He gave a broken smile. Yeah, we do that. Her glow softened. And yet, your inefficiency may have prevented a war. She lifted a data tablet, symbols flowing across it. The assassins acted under military orders. Their government expected no witnesses. They did not account for a human translator who would die to save a child. Thomas blinked, dazed. So this could have started a war? It could have, she said. Instead, it may end one. She studied him for a long, silent moment. My granddaughter asked me why a stranger would suffer for her. I told her, because that is what humans do. Thomas looked away. Not all humans. Perhaps not, the matriarch said, but enough to change the course of history. She turned to leave, then paused. When you are healed, Thomas Chun, the Silicate Coalition would have you serve as ambassador. Not of politics, but of values. We wish to learn this inefficiency you call compassion. He blinked, barely believing. You want me to teach aliens to care? No, she said, her voice almost kind. We want you to remind us why caring matters, even when it hurts. Then she was gone. The room hummed softly around him. He stared up at the glassy ceiling, and for the first time, the silence of the stars felt personal. Recovery took months. Silicate healers mended his body with living light, restructured bone and flesh until he could stand again. But some pain refused to leave. It stayed behind his ribs, echoing like memory. He learned, slowly, what had happened outside that alley. The footage had spread faster than light itself. Market cameras, citizen feeds, surveillance drones. All captured the moment one human threw himself into death for a child of crystal. The galaxy had watched him fall, and the galaxy had changed because of it. To humans, Thomas became a symbol. To the Silicate, a legend. To the Valerians, an embarrassment too public to erase. They issued denials, apologies, anything to save face. But the damage was done. For the first time, the galaxy didn't see humanity as reckless or primitive. It saw them as something rarer, a species willing to bleed for a stranger. The Silicate Coalition established the Chun Initiative, a new program dedicated to studying empathy and cooperation between species. Its motto was carved into crystal. Efficiency serves survival. Compassion defines civilization. When Thomas finally stood before the Coalition Assembly, thousands of silicate filled the chamber, faceted bodies reflecting the light in 1,000 colors. He felt small, limping still, his voice unsteady. I'm not a soldier, he began. I'm not even brave. I just couldn't watch a child die. He took a breath. Where I come from, compassion isn't strategy. It's what makes us human. We don't calculate when someone's in danger. We act. Maybe it's reckless. Maybe it's stupid. But it's us. He looked out at the shimmering sea of alien light. Maybe that's the one thing we bring to the galaxy that's worth keeping. For a long moment, silence held the air. Then, slowly, the silicate began to resonate. A low, harmonic vibration that filled the chamber, growing brighter, richer, louder. Their version of applause. And Thomas Chun, once just a translator, realized he had translated something greater than words. He had translated what it meant to be human. Years passed like slow orbits around a distant sun. Thomas Chun remained on Port Meridian for a time, then traveled further, deeper, to the worlds that had once looked at humanity with disdain. Everywhere he went, people wanted to meet him, the man who had thrown himself into the storm. But he never spoke of the blades, or the pain, or even the child. He spoke instead of what came after, of choice, of meaning. of the strange, illogical thing inside the human soul that made people do the impossible. On Silicate Prime, the crystal cities built in his honor glowed in soft blues and golds. Children carved his likeness into translucent shards and left them at temple steps. Merchants renamed the market where it happened, Chun's Crossing. And the story spread far beyond that one world. The Valerians, shamed by exposure, sent envoys to the Silicate Coalition. For the first time in centuries, they admitted fault. The assassins were punished. The council was restructured. But the real change wasn't in government halls. It was in the hearts of people who had grown up believing compassion was weakness. Now they whispered a new word into their children's ears. Human. And that word meant courage without logic, kindness without gain, mercy without condition. Thomas met with leaders, soldiers, students. He taught that empathy wasn't softness, it was resilience. It was the decision to see another being's pain as your own. And through the Chun Initiative, that idea spread like wildfire. Entire academies were founded on it. Diplomatic protocols rewritten to prioritize emotion alongside strategy. A generation of young officers, human, Silicate, Valerian, and more, grew up believing that compassion was not a flaw, but an advantage. When the Meridian Accords were signed, the ceremony took place beneath the same station where Thomas had once nearly died. The treaty was vast, intricate, and political, but in its core, one clause glowed with poetic defiance. No calculation shall outweigh the value of life. Thomas stood on the viewing deck as two fleets, once enemies, exchanged light salutes instead of fire. His chest still ached with the ghosts of 8 blades. He placed a hand over his ribs, feeling the pulse beneath, and whispered to himself, "Inefficient, but it works." He never sought fame. He never grew comfortable with the word hero. He called himself a reminder, living proof that one irrational act could bend the trajectory of history. And when young diplomats asked how he found the strength to run toward danger that day, he always gave the same answer. "I didn't find strength," he said. "I found someone who needed help." In the quiet years that followed, Thomas lived simply. He spent mornings teaching interspecies linguistics, afternoons recording lectures for students across the coalition. He was older now, slower, but his words carried weight wherever they traveled. And when asked if he regretted anything, he would pause, look down at the faint scars on his chest, and say, "Only that I couldn't save more." Thomas Chun died peacefully on Earth at the age of 71. He passed away in his sleep, beneath a skylight that showed the same stars he had once bled under. His family was with him. So were the echoes of 12 worlds. News of his death reached the coalition within hours. Flags of light dimmed across Silicate Prime. Even the Valerian Concord observed silence for one full rotation, something they had never done before, not for a human, not for anyone. The funeral took place 3 weeks later, under the open sky. The air was clear, and the wind carried the scent of spring. Representatives from 12 worlds gathered in quiet rows, some in robes of crystal, some in exosuits of steel, all united by a single story, a story that had outlived politics, language, and reason. When the speeches ended, the crowd parted. From among them stepped a young Silicate woman, her crystalline surface shimmering in soft violet and blue hues. She moved with slow grace, light refracting through her body like sunrise through stained glass. The child he had once saved, grown, radiant, alive. She approached the grave, kneeling beside the stone that bore his name. From her hands, she lifted a small crystal prism, perfectly cut. She placed it gently atop the soil, and as sunlight touched it, 8 radiant beams shot outward, spilling color across the grass. 8 blades, 8 scars, 8 acts of defiance that rippled through the galaxy. Reporters recorded every moment. But when the woman spoke, the noise of the crowd fell away until only her voice remained, clear, melodic, resonant with emotion. "He once told my grandmother that compassion is inefficient," she said. "And yet, inefficiency saved me. It saved my family. It saved us all." Her words traveled faster than light, broadcast to every corner of known space. The phrase, "inefficient, but it works," became a slogan, a creed. Students carved it into their desks. Pilots wrote it on their ships. Diplomats carried it into tense negotiations. It became part of humanity's legacy, woven into the identity of an entire galactic age. Years later, the matriarch herself, old now, her glow faded to a pale silver, would stand before the Silicate Council and say, "The galaxy once taught us that logic preserves life. But Thomas Chun taught us that love gives it meaning." And in that moment, across the shimmering expanse of the stars, something profound shifted. Because sometimes, legends aren't born in battlefields or councils. Sometimes they are born in the seconds between heartbeat and blade. In the single, impossible choice to stand up when no one else will. And so the story lived on. In libraries carved from glass. In data archives orbiting suns. In the hearts of those who had never met him, but somehow knew him anyway. Some said it was just a story, but others swore that, in the silence of deep space, if you listened hard enough, you could still hear it. The faint, steady rhythm of a human heart that refused to stop. A heart that bled for a child. A heart that changed the stars. A heart that proved compassion is the strongest force in the universe. Centuries later, in the archives of the Galactic Concord, an ancient file is preserved under a simple title. The Translator Who Bled for the Stars. It contains footage, grainy, distorted, but still powerful. A human man sprinting into danger. A blur of movement. 8 blades flashing in the market light. And then silence. The file is mandatory study material for every new diplomat in the coalition. Not because it teaches language, but because it teaches meaning. At the end of each orientation, the instructor says the same thing. Words can save lives. But sometimes, you must become the sentence yourself. On Silicate Prime, in the heart of the Matriarch's garden, a monument stands. A sculpture of crystal and steel depicting a man shielding a child made of light. At sunrise, the monument refracts the sun into 8 perfect beams that sweep across the plaza. Every year, on that morning, beings of a dozen species gather in silence. And when the first beam touches the ground, they whisper his name. Thomas Chun, the inefficient man. The human who proved that compassion, once unleashed, can outlive stars. No empire lasts forever. No alliance stands unbroken. But stories endure. And somewhere beyond the edge of the known, where light fades and silence reigns, the universe still carries the faint echo of a heartbeat that refused to stop. A sound older than reason. The sound of a human heart that chose love over logic. And, in doing so, taught the galaxy how to feel.